Hello and welcome to this overview of your dissertation. I've divided this presentation up into a few key stages so that you can pace how you're progressing with your dissertation. I've talked about the first stage, a couple of major stages, and then a bringing it all together stage. And what I'll be going through in this mini lecture is matching the guidance sheet that you should have received with these major stages. So as students on the full-time programme, you do have a major piece of work to be undertaking and submitting, and it is really important that you stick as much as possible to the time frame that I've suggested for you. Obviously work with your individual supervisor to fine-tune some of those dates, but don't fall behind. So you will have been invited to attend an online introduction to the dissertation, and the information that you would have received at that online introduction is the information that's on Blackboard, and I'll be sending you a small mini lecture just guiding you around the Blackboard site for the dissertation. So there are lots of resources on there to guide you through the process. By now you will have received the name and contact details of your dissertation supervisor, and we expect you to be proactive in arranging those appointments and maintaining the contact with your dissertation supervisor. Don't wait for them to contact you. It's for you to lead this process. So you will already have had some discussion with me as the programme leader about the initial idea for your dissertation, and it's important that you let your supervisor know your thoughts on this as well. So as part of this first stage of your dissertation, when you make contact with your supervisor, do give them an up-to-date idea of where you feel your dissertation focus is heading. And whilst you're waiting for your first dissertation meeting, there's plenty that you can be doing. You can be familiarising yourself with the resources available on the dissertation Blackboard site. There are many videos for you to watch and papers for you to read. You can be using the online library and the databases such as Medline and Sinal to do a quick run through of your literature search to see what's the broad overview of the current papers that are available. And remember, we're looking for research papers for your dissertation. If you read policy reports, guidance documents, they're all well and good, obviously, but they go in the background introduction to your dissertation. They don't go in the major section of your dissertation, because we're looking at you locating and appraising research papers in the major section of your dissertation. As part of your preparation, you need to be locating either your preference for online or hard copy textbooks and papers that explain how to undertake a systematic review of the literature. Now, you're not undertaking a full systematic review of the literature, but your dissertation is a systematised review, so it's a scaled down version, but it uses the methodology of a systematic review. So it's really useful if you can reading books and papers on how to undertake a systematic review of the literature. And evidence-based practice textbooks tend to have a few good chapters on how to search the evidence, how to appraise the evidence. So as you undertake this reading in preparation for your dissertation on how to undertake a systematised review of the literature, do make notes, make sure you can identify the reference for the sources that you've used to justify the approach that you use. Sometimes it sounds like you're just writing like very practical steps that you undertook when you search and appraise the literature, but it must be supported by reference to published work. So when you have your first online supervision meeting with your supervisor, you've already done quite a bit of background work, and you'll be able to inform the supervisor of the outcome of your first quick literature search, because if you're really struggling to locate papers, you may very well need to change your focus. If you've got too many papers, again, you might need to review your focus. And just looking at some of the students I've reviewed their dissertations recently, we tend not to give a number of how many papers you can review or should review, but some of the students I reviewed recently, they had about 20 plus papers in their dissertation, just to give you a ballpark figure for kind of how many papers you need to be locating. So following your first meeting with your supervisor, you should now be cracking on with writing the introduction to your systematised review. So this is really your first chapter, and it's the background to the issue that you're going to be exploring in your dissertation. So it's really important that you get this written quickly to a good standard, lots of references, and get this sent to your supervisor prior to your next supervision meeting. So this is all what I see as being the first stage of your dissertation, about setting the scene, checking the appropriateness of your search questions, checking the appropriateness of the focus of your dissertation. It's about taking a bit of time to evolve and develop your search question. So we talk about search questions. For evidence-based practice, you're searching for the evidence in your dissertation to answer the question that your dissertation is focusing on. So this is kind of a bit of an image for you to be thinking about the process that you're undertaking. If the top ball is all the research that's out there on different databases, if the bottom little ball on the right is your final dissertation, that's you in between doing all that running backwards and forwards. So it kind of feels like quite a full-on process, academically speaking. That's what it is. That's what it should be looking like. You've got a lot of effort to put in that middle ground to identify the papers that are available in the body of knowledge. And then you're having to locate them, appraise them, thematically analyse them, and discuss them in the context that you've set in your introduction. So the first major stage of your dissertation is to write about how you construct your search question. It's writing the methods of your systematic review of the literature, and this will be all in your methods chapter. So there are a few different recognised frameworks for constructing your search question. There's PICO, which is your population, the intervention, comparison and outcome. So that might be an appropriate framework to construct your search question. And you can find references to this approach in evidence-based practice textbooks. You don't have to have the C, you don't have to have the comparison if that's not appropriate for your question. It could be PEO, it could be the population, the exposure and the outcome. So what you need to do is to read the evidence-based practice textbooks and the papers and choose a search framework that is most appropriate for you to be using for the question you're asking, and explain in your dissertation how you constructed your search question. So how you construct your dissertation question. So in the guidance sheet, I've set a date by which you should have sent your search question to your supervisor. You then need to crack on with undertaking the literature search of the databases. And in my guidance, I've made a note of all the aspects of your search that you need to record, and then you use this to write up your literature search in your methods chapter, and that has to be supported by reference to the literature, so the literature on systematic reviews or how to search for the evidence. So as you're undertaking your literature search, you might notice that certain aspects of your strategy are really effective. So tell us about that in your account. You may notice that certain aspects of your strategy really aren't working at all. Maybe think about why they aren't working. Again, this all needs to be in your methods chapter. This is a critical commentary on your approach to searching the literature. So I've set you a date in the guidance sheet about when you need to send this to your dissertation supervisor, because you have a second part of this major first stage to also be undertaking, and that's the appraisal of the papers. So when you've located your papers, you need to decide which are the appraisal tools that you should be using, and these you can find different examples on the Blackboard site. There's the CASP tool, there's the Healthcare Practice Research and Development Unit tools, and various others that are made available for you. You then need to appraise your papers, and at this point it's a really good idea to make a table, make a matrix. So you may want columns in this matrix, maybe on the left hand side, the reference to the paper, then the methodology of the paper, then a column with the methods, and then two columns with an overarching heading of critical appraisal, the first column with the strengths of the paper, as in their methodology and their methods, and then a column with the limitations of the methodology and methods of the paper, then a column with the like the content findings related to the issue that you're looking at. And this is a really important document to keep populating as you appraise the literature. This is your working document that'll help you write a good critical account in your next work that you're going to send to your supervisor. So the next section that you submit, which is still this major stage 1, is how did you appraise the literature? So not so much what the findings were, but how did you undertake this appraisal of the literature? So this major stage 1 is all the practical aspects of searching for the literature and appraising the literature. And all of this goes in your methods chapter. So I've given you a date when your appraisal account needs to be sent to your supervisor along with your matrix. Your matrix can either go in your appendices or in the text of your assignment. It really depends how your word count and your dissertation is evolving later on. So the next major stage of work for you to do, so the pressure's still on, is the next chapter is your findings chapter. And again, this should come in 2 parts or even 2 separate chapters. The first part, or the first chapter of your findings, is an account of the methodological aspects of the papers. So the methodologies they used, the methods that they used. And don't write this paper by paper. Look to make some critical commentary across the papers that you've reviewed. So there might be similarities, there might be differences. So the first part of your findings is what did you find in terms of methodologies, in terms of methods that were used in the papers that you've appraised. So I've given you a date in the guidance sheet of when you should be sending this to your supervisor, and then you can move on to the second part of your findings chapter, or your second findings chapter, just depending on how you want to divide your work up. So the second part of your findings is kind of about the content. So what are the themes that you found in the literature? So this relates actually to the focus, like the content of the papers, less so than the earlier part of your findings, which was looking at methodology and methods. The students find it useful in this second part to explore thematically the findings of those papers. So again, look at the body of knowledge, the body of papers that you've been reviewing, and identify the findings. So you don't write paper 1, paper 2, paper 3. You write like a synopsis. You bring them together. You don't write them one after the other. So you have kind of done the hard work, but don't relax just yet, because you've still got your discussion chapter and you still need some cognitive power here to bring it all together. So look at what you wrote in your introduction. Look at what the policy issues, the national and international issues are that you highlighted in your introduction about why this was an important issue to look at. And then look at how your findings relate to the issues that you've addressed. So there is another guidance sheet, a generic guidance sheet for all students undertaking the dissertation. That's a really good crib sheet of what needs to be in each chapter. So you've got lots of guidance. This is just a little additional lecture I'm putting for the full-time students on the MSc Dementia Care and the Enabling Environment to make sure we keep you on track and to give you the optimal chance to get a high mark in this dissertation. So after your discussion, you might want to breathe that sigh of relief. Just a little bit further to go. We just need you to write your conclusions, your reference list and your appendices, and get that to your supervisor for review. And then you can just be doing your final proofread and making your final amendments. So we hope you enjoy this dissertation journey. We're sure that at the end you'll be much wiser and in a really good position to take forward the knowledge that you acquire from undertaking this dissertation into practice and making a difference to the experience of people who live with dementia, the carers of people with dementia, and those who work in services for people who have dementia.